Thank you for joining us wherever you are. This podcast episode is brought to you by the Old Ways Actual Play team. This actual play uses the 7th edition Call of Cthulhu tabletop role-playing game rules by Chaosium. This actual play is performed by adults and in an adult setting. While we try very hard to stick to language for all ages, listeners should know that this podcast may include mature themes. All content, including names, places, events, companies, and etc., that may bear resemblance to entities living or dead, is strictly coincidental. My name is Michael Diamond, and for tonight's game, I will be your keeper. Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Old Ways Podcast. I'm your keeper, Michael, and we return to Horror on the Orient Express, where we are in Belgrade and about to view some body parts. But before that, I would like to, at the top of the show, as always, thank our listeners and our Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join the list of Patreon supporters, you can at patreon.com/theoldwayspodcast. And you can check us out on YouTube. And I hope you do, and give us a subscribe there. We greatly appreciate all of your time and your listening ears. Now, off to introductions. So, to my right.
Hi, this is Mike, and I play James Robert Fraser, who is currently sitting in a comfortable chair at the Hotel Petrograd, having a nice cup of tea and a smoked salmon sandwich with the crusts cut off.
It does seem like his speed. To Mr. Fraser's right.
Hi, this is Rena. I play Lady Elizabeth Fitzroy, and I've set up a meeting for a man to see Miss Bellinger's body parts, and it feels slightly strange.
A mustachioed man at that. We are in the Missing Giles formation, and we know that Giles, who plays Simon, will be back with us in the next couple of weeks. So we look forward to it. To Lady Elizabeth's right.
Hi, this is Miranda, and I play Maggie Bellinger. And I'll be honest, I'm starting to get a little nervous about someone getting their grubby little hands on my body parts.
I think that's fair. I mean, it does seem a little strange to set up sort of an appointment for an older mustachioed man to view and possibly touch your body parts.
Especially after hearing how he caressed his statuary.
He does seem to love the statues of Venus. You've picked up on that as well. I'm certain that the viewing will be a spectacular event for all to see. And last but most certainly not least.
I'm Martin, and I'm playing Richard Courtney. And Richard's looking forward to sitting down, drinking a nice cup of tea, and watching somebody play with Maggie's body parts.
You are going to get a chance then to view them without the assistance of your famed spectacles, as those are in the shop for additional repairs.
Yes, Richard is really looking forward to seeing exactly what's going to happen with this new white sapphire lens.
I am too. And so we'll raise the curtain tonight in a hotel where the boys are having tea and perhaps some sandwiches. And Miss Bellinger is playing with body parts, specifically those of the Sedekvar Simulacrum. So if you could give us an idea, Miss Bellinger, which body part are you going to select?
Probably arm, because it can be discreet, even though I don't want him to be able to more easily steal it. A leg is more difficult to steal, but I think that since we'll be out in public, maybe the arm would be a better choice.
Okay, very well. So what sort of preparations are you making then for this arm, the left arm?
I'm speaking to it lovingly, telling it that it's going to be okay, that I won't let any man take it away from me. And then I will lightly wrap it in cloth. I'll whisper once again, it's going to be okay to it. And then I will tuck it away in a bag if I can, but have it kind of wrapped up and head out to meet this gentleman.
Okay. There's a bit of a smell to it, the arm. It's an earthy smell.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes sense where I found it. So.
You also smell the same scents there, the roses.
Mm-hmm.
Those are also present, very strong. The closer that you get to it, and you sort of lose a few minutes taking in the aroma of the part.
Mm-hmm.
The grave, the dirt, the roses. It's a little intoxicating, but you manage to pull yourself out of it and then head down the stairs. Lady Elizabeth, where are you during this extravaganza then?
I think, without telling Mr. Fraser, Lady E's been writing a note in response to the one she got at the hotel and leaving it at the front desk in case anyone comes calling for it.
But would you mind sharing the contents of that note with us?
So it just says, would like to have a chat. Where do you suggest? No funny business, as the Americans say. Lady Elizabeth.
Fair enough. We shall stick that in our memory banks, and should it prove useful in the future, I'm certain we'll call on it. So I guess then, perhaps not to belabor the point, if you are going to drop it off at the front desk, you're going to have to walk by the cafe area where Mr. Fraser's, of course, having his tea and his sandwich in preparation for going out to the other hotel, the fake hotel. And as a lady of station, my guess is it would normally be proper etiquette to hand it to your assistant to thus hand to the hotel staff, because a lady of your station wouldn't directly interact with hotel staff if they didn't have to. And so what I'll ask then is for Lady Elizabeth to make a stealth roll, and for Mr. Fraser, of course, to accompanying it by a spot hidden roll.
I only have 28 in stealth.
I know, but there is no way the man would miss this. I mean, just wouldn't.
I did get a 0.5.
I think it's a particularly good cup of tea. I should probably have a penalty die.
Yeah, I could see that.
You're going to have to roll for the catering of the hotel to see how good a cup of tea they make.
It's true. So we'll do that right now. Oh, wait. Actually, that's a 0.8 on my cooking. So that is a fantastic cup of tea that you're having. And the world and much of the problems of the recent hours of Mr. Fraser has totally just melted away into the space between the lips and the saucer. So yes, I will give you a penalty die, sir.
Oh, splendid cup of tea. I didn't even need the penalty die because I've just rolled an 84. It is a success, but it's just a normal success.
Well, she just beat you based on the tier of success. So there's no question that you do get over to the front desk, but you do in sort of an indirect way. You move from the staircase to a back area that has some shelving, and then around another section of the floor where there's some, we'll just say, some inside greenery, and then you use part of the staff who moving back and forth between there and the kitchen as a natural block, and you finally get to the desk and very, very carefully and quietly say, should anyone call for me or this person or this room number, please give them this note. And the staff accept it, realizing the game within a game that is going on here in the cafe, and you manage just to, avoid the sure and steady eyesight of your personal assistant.
Well, they probably just assume it's some sort of assignation, romantic liaison or something. I'm sure in a fancy hotel they get sort of thing from nobility all the time.
All right, Richard. So you're having tea there with Mr. Fraser, and you're feeling a bit naked. You don't remember your suit jacket being this light. The device has always been so close. It's like missing your favorite watch or a good set of pencils.
I can imagine Richard patting his jacket down as he does from time to time, just checking that he's got everything there, remembering that the device is somewhere else, probably worrying about it from time to time, but reminding himself that whatever was missing, Professor Smith was looking for it. Now he's found it, and that's worth the risk.
That's all you can hope for at this point, yes. Miss Bellinger comes down the stairs. I guess that's a good question, Maggie. Are you swaddling it? It's an arm, so...
I guess what angle is the elbow bent at?
I don't know, probably between 30 and 45 degrees.
Just checking. Because, that depends on how discreet one can be with it. But I imagined if I have some sort of, cross-body bag, I can kind of have it tucked in there a little bit and sticking out partially.
Interesting.
Probably sticking out mostly, but still, it's there and I can secure it with one hand, have my other hand free as needed.
Well, you could tuck one arm in under your shirt and have the simulacrum arm going out the sleeve of your shirt and the hand like that. That would be very convincing, I think.
On display for everyone to see?
Well, don't you want everyone to marvel in its glory?
No, I don't want anyone to see it. I don't want anyone to covet my arm. I must protect it.
You have secured the arm in a over-the-shoulder or bag that you have here at your side. You do have a piece of the elbow and maybe a bit of that top of the forearm that sticks out. There's really no way to completely hide it, but it's good enough. You see that the rest of the party here, minus Simon, is down at a table, seemingly having a cup of tea before tonight's adventure begins.
I will approach. Well, I'm ready. We're ready. I gesture at the arm.
Miss Bellinger. Fraser will, of course, stand up.
You'll be close by, right, Fraser, Richard?
Yes.
That is certainly the intention, yes, indeed.
If anything were to happen, if you were to make some sort of play for the arm, you would intervene, right?
We're always here to lend a hand. I mean, you already have, 3 now, but yes, we can lend another.
Many hands make light work, as they say.
Okay, yes. Maggie seems nervous.
Miss Ballinger, put yourself at ease. We are right here. We will be watching like a hawk to ensure that this fellow Todorovic does not try any funny business.
He seems rather strange and doesn't seem to have let on as much when we were talking to him as he actually knows about the simulacrum, if we're going based off what our friend in the basement said.
I don't quite follow. Our friend in the basement?
Well, me and Lady Elizabeth, we met a gentleman in the basement of the museum.
Yes, we do tend to run into rather interesting fellows in basements around Europe, don't we? This one was corporeal, Mr. Fraser.
Oh, well, I was just about to ask.
Yes, I thought you might be wondering.
He's quite nice, and I think he was just a rather lonely fellow sitting down there working by himself, so just keeping an eye, and he welcomed the company, and he told us quite a few things.
Not in any way like the fellow that you met in Paris, in the catacombs.
No, not at all. Both fine, nice gentlemen.
This one was a little less hungry, I'm assuming.
They're shorter, too.
Was he some sort of caretaker, something of that ilk?
Well, something like that. I think more like a receptionist.
He was more cataloging the treasures that were being returned, I gather. So some sort of archivist.
Oh, I see, I understand. I'm with you now. Well, if we're all ready, shall we? Professor, I take it you are prepared, yes?
I'm ready. Do you have your gun?
That's what I meant by prepared.
All right. Then we are fully armed.
Splendid.
So the walk to the Europa is not terribly far. I'd say probably a good 10-15 minutes down the way. It is towards that bazaar and Turkish area, but not completely in total, about halfway there. There's a more grander marketplace that exists a little closer to that, but you will be on the outskirts of that, not too far from the post office as well. So, entering the Europa Hotel, it's frankly luxurious. It's maybe 2 or 3 steps up from the hotel that you're staying in currently. It's gilded and opulent, and there are several people here who you recognize from the Orient Express. Other passengers. There's a couple of there's an elderly couple that you've seen who use wheelchairs to get on and off the train that are having dinner not terribly far in the local restaurant down here. There's a couple that you've seen in the smoking lounge and the saloons there and the car that are also here. You don't know them by name, but you know them by face.
Important question, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Is the enfant terrible in here?
The terrible child?
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no, terrible child that exists in this space at the moment. You see the doctor not too terribly far. He's dressed just as he was in the museum, and he seems to be having maybe some type of beverage. I think it's probably coffee.
I think before we go in, Fraser would suggest that they go in separately if we are maintaining a discreet distance. So perhaps the professor and I could go and find a place to sit. Could you describe the gentleman to me so that I'll know him if he's there, and we'll be able to sit somewhere where we have a good view of the table that he's at?
So one thing that you probably would remember from earlier today, that it might be Lady Elizabeth that points this out, he had a very stylish tie.
Oh yeah, he was a very fancy dresser.
He was very fancily dressed, and he also had a very luxurious moustache.
A great bushy moustache, well kept. He actually also has a sort of a patch beard, a direct arrow down patch beard, wears spectacles. That's the description you get.
Excellent. I will keep my eyes peeled for such a gentleman.
It's also a description of basically half of Belgrade. So entering the Hotel Europa here, you are immediately beset upon by guests, staff members who want to assist you with whatever you need. You barely get 3 steps in the door before you're greeted very respectfully. They ask if they can take your bag. They ask if you need to see the staff here for your reservation, that sort of thing.
No, just taking tea, thank you very much. Very kind of you all the same.
He gestured to the restaurant. Ladies, deeper in towards the restaurant, as you've seen, the doctor signals you with a very slight raise of his hand just to get your attention. You've already seen him at this point.
I'll wave slightly and head in that direction.
I do not wave, but I head in that direction.
He stands up as you approach and steps around the table towards you to pull a few chairs out before you arrive, and then takes a step back in towards his own chair. Good evening. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. Hello.
He looks at you a little strange.
Yeah, I obviously have half an arm. Well, not obviously, it's wrapped.
You can tell that he's eyeing it.
I've brought the item, but I'm sure, as you can understand, I'm quite nervous about having it out in public.
He looks around. Nervous? For what?
I would hate for something to happen to it.
Oh, I would too. If it is, of course, what I think it is.
And what do you think it is, Professor?
I think it's one of several pieces of a very ancient legend. But first, let's have a drink. He sits down.
I'll have some tea, thank you.
Waitstaff comes over and assists with getting your tea. Miss Bellinger, are you having anything to drink?
I will order tea as well, but I will not drink it.
So, how long have you been collecting?
Not long at all. Very new to the game.
After the war here, we made some very specific laws regarding artifacts that were taken from Belgrade. Certain permits are required for it now, and that's because our land has been ravaged, not just by war, but by scavengers who seek to unearth and destroy our heritage.
Do you think that this was taken from Belgrade originally?
No. If it is what I think it is, I don't believe so. I believe it was made. Legend says it was made east of here.
Interesting. Well then, would you like to see it?
I would.
I will pull it out of my bag and kind of gingerly set it on the table and start to unwrap it.
When you set it on the table, there is a weight that the arm does not carry which lands on the table. It feels like giving up a child.
I don't like that.
It feels like you're letting something out of your grasp that you shouldn't. And even sort of unwrapping it, it feels somehow wrong. It's not what you should be doing. You shouldn't be here. You get all sorts of just emotions that flood out of this action. You can feel your fingers tremble as you're pulling away at some of the clothing. And this is noticeable to you, Lady Elizabeth, as you're close enough. And for you gentlemen at sort of the back area, or this area away from them, you feel almost the hackles raise just because you've been so careful with every single piece of this. You've kept things quiet, you've kept things away, and now something is exposed. For you, Fraser, it probably feels like having an important flank in a battle exposed and realizing that someone's made the decision that it has to be, but you don't like it, and so your eyes are just making sure that every nook and cranny of this restaurant, this cafe area are covered.
Do I have a good enough view of this fellow Todorovich to be able to assess his reaction to seeing the arm, whether it's academic interest or some sort of a zealous, covetous, desirous look he gives it?
Does he put on the old feverish cultist mask? Give it to me.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. You can make a psychology roll.
Thank you.
As you unwrap the arm, Miss Bellinger, you see again that porcelain-colored arm. You see the pattern, which is, again, this kaleidoscopic version of the arm painted on it, and it sort of intertwines into infinity within the space. It's what makes it so unimaginably beautiful at the same time.
Maggie looks like she's going to throw up, for one. And for two, I feel like I would try to keep my hand on the arm.
So like your hand in its hand?
I mean, I imagined my hand being closer to the bicep when I put it down.
Okay.
And just having it kind of lightly gripped on there, just in case.
So, Mr. Fraser, your roll?
So I failed my roll, but if you're willing to allow it, I would like to push the roll. The manner in which I'd like to push it is I would like to just casually get up from my seat and stroll across the restaurant to get a look at the scene through the window and see Belgrade from this particular vantage point. And perhaps at the same time pass a little closer to the table where Lady Elizabeth, Maggie, and this gentleman are sitting.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
So my push roll is a normal success.
All right. So from that vantage point, what you ascertain about his first looks at the arm are undeniably completely academic. You don't sense any overt eagerness of him to grab it. Even his fingers don't actually touch the part. He touches the cloth to pull it a little closer so that he can see it. He almost physically does not want to come into contact with it. He is actually more concerned, it seems anyway, about Miss Bellinger's reaction. And there's a bit of an upturn in one of his eyebrows as he looks up to her. He seems to be a little bit befuddled by some of her reaction.
That's very interesting. Kind of puts him at ease a little bit about that particular situation. And it's good to know that he's just touching cloth. So I think Fraser will also take this opportunity as he kind of spends a moment looking out the window and then returns back to the chair that he was sitting at with the professor without so much as glancing at the others. But he will take this opportunity just to look around the room, just to observe the faces of the people in the room, just to set his mind at rest that there's nobody around and about that looks suspicious.
Nobody around her about that looks suspicious. Yeah, I'm going to say that that's an extreme spot hidden roll.
Alrighty. And that is a 16, which is an extreme spot hidden roll.
There is a person in this room that isn't right. And it's not anybody who's terribly close to you. It's probably somebody 20 or so feet from where you're at, dining in the cafe not far from here. You have seen them before. You've actually seen them on 2 occasions, and your brain has finally made 1 + 1 = 2. You saw them first get off the train in Milan, an old man assisted in a wheelchair. You then saw them get on the train in Trieste as you were coming off the train. The same man in the same wheelchair heading on the train. And even though in Trieste more than a week passed, they got off with you in Belgrade. Your brain starts picking this together. And what gives it away is that sort of white cloth wrapping that they have around their shoulders, something that to make them look like they're cold and elderly and huddled. Very much the same cloth work that you saw the Comte wear when he fell from the sky in Milan.
I think there will be a moment where Fraser's pulse quickens. Perhaps he feels a little chill run up his spine, but he will try and remain as expressionless as he can as he will continue back to sit beside Richard at the table. Can we see this gentleman? Is he in a wheelchair just now?
He is in a wheelchair, yes.
And he was unaccompanied when we've seen him getting on and off the train, other than porters helping him on and off.
Yes.
If we can see him, Fraser will very discreetly, as he's perhaps pouring another cup of tea, say, Professor Courtney, as subtly as it is possible, if you cast a glance to your right and observe the elderly gentleman in the wheelchair sitting by himself in the corner, don't look for more than a moment and ensure that he does not see you looking.
Right. Richard will just look over in that general direction.
It's still going to be a spot hidden roll, and it's still hard even after it's pointed out.
So also in this direction that Richard's looking, is this just sort of part of the same room, or is this cafe?
So to give you a little bit of the makeup, there is a proper restaurant here in the bottom of this hotel. There is a cafe portion that exists sort of on the outside of it where you first would enter, where someone could come sit down, have a drink, have a sandwich, maybe whatever it is, and then go about their business. A more formal dinner, which is where this gentleman that Fraser is pointing out is sitting, but he is sitting in such a placement, in such a fashion where, because of the wheelchair, it gives him immediate access out to where that cafe area is and a perfect sight line to what's happening.
So I'm also going to assume that if we've got restaurant, cafe, wheelchair guy is quite close to the cafe entrance, which sort of makes sense from an accessibility point of view. The toilets are likely to be sort of through the cafe, I would assume, nearer the getty in the outy bit.
I would assume.
Yeah, okay, that's good. So let me make my spot hidden. Excellent. That is 38, which is not quite enough. Oh, hang on. Sorry. So my problem here is that I haven't updated my character sheet, so I need to divide that by, that's 2 off. I'm going to spend the luck because that's going to be fun.
Oh, are you?
2, it's just 2 luck.
Very well. You see the person he's pointing out, and you see that person staring very intently. Is he simulating eating? Is he simulating drinking? It's hard to tell. You're not directly in his line of sight.
So Richard's going to lean over to grab the teapot. In time-honoured fashion, he's going to somehow have an accident with it. He's going to go to pour the tea, and he's going to do it with such fierce velocity that the lid's going to fly off the top, and he's going to probably ham it up a little bit. And stand up with an obvious patch of tea in his crotch. Clearly this poor man is going to need to go and sort his self out, so he's going to wander off to wherever the toilets are to sort himself out.
What are you doing, man? What's the matter with you?
Well, I appear to have spilled some more tea. Another pair of trousers. With his back to the cafe area, he's going to sort of tip Fraser a wink to let him know that something's going on.
Fraser will just roll his eyes. Could have just went to the toilet. I don't know why he has to do the whole song and dance about it.
And rather than respond, he'll pick up another napkin and start patting his crotch with it to start soaking this tea off before beetling off towards the cafe.
That's a professor I know. And back at the table, there is a slight commotion, but Maggie, your perspective is very focused. You see as well that the doctor here, the curator, doesn't touch the arm at all.
Good.
He touches the wrapping that you'd used to conceal its arrival. And he looks at you and he says, "May I ask, are you quite all right?"
Oh, I'm fine. I feel wonderful.
You are, he takes out a handkerchief from his pocket and hands it to you. If you need. Lady Elizabeth, you notice that Maggie has begun to sweat an awful lot.
Miss Bellinger, are you quite all right?
Yes, my stomach is feeling a bit ill, but I'm fine.
Have you perhaps caught a fever?
Oh, I'll be all right. There's no need to worry.
Every time you say that, Miss Bellinger, my trust in that statement dips further.
It's neither here nor there. It's all fine. I'm sure you can understand. I'm sure you can understand why I may be nervous having this out in this situation in such a public place.
I can imagine. He takes his spectacles and raises them just slightly off the bridge of his nose and then sets them back down. I think this may be a genuine piece.
Oh, I'm fairly certain it is, Professor.
How is that?
Would you like to smell it? We found it underground.
Where did you locate it?
Outside of Paris.
Oh, interesting. Takes out a small notebook and begins making a couple of notes. I can tell you that if it is the genuine piece, I do know someone who might be interested in it.
We're not looking to offload at all.
Oh, then you're looking to collect the rest.
That is why we came to see you. Our mutual friend directed us to you as possibly someone who would know where there's a piece here.
He, again, takes the cloth and turns it so that the piece is laying lengthwise. He looks a little unsettled. I may know someplace where you could acquire the piece that is here.
Is it in the basement of the museum?
No. To my knowledge, it's not underground at all. Before I'm willing to impart any information, though, I'm going to need certain assurances.
What kind?
Legal kind.
Legal kind?
Yes. As the curator for the National Museum, the piece is within the sovereign territory and ground of Belgrade. And while that might seem like nothing to an American such as yourself, our history means quite a bit. We don't look favorable upon outsiders coming into our lands and stealing what is ours.
Well, do you expect me just to settle down in Belgrade then?
He stands up a little. He sits up a little straighter. I expect you to abide by our rules and guidelines. You are the one here seeking information, not me.
That is true.
Professor, but if the piece is not originally from Belgrade, if it was just left here, then surely there's no issue.
Technicalities are something that the British have used for years to do exactly what you would like to do. And I'm not here to speak to technicalities. It is in Belgrade. That is what is important. Now, this piece could be removed from the place that's in if I have certain assurances.
What sort of assurances would you like?
I would like a letter, one I could take to the National Museum and keep on file and record of who had agreed that after the piece was obtained, a juncture after a year, it would be brought back to Belgrade, to the National Museum for display.
Well, that seems quite reasonable to me.
Wonderful. Then as a woman of title, then I would expect you to sign it.
Of course.
Wonderful. I'm happy to draft the letter tomorrow morning.
I shan't be signing anything until we have some idea of where to look, or what information you have, just to ensure that we're bargaining fairly.
This is not a position where you hold the power. I have the information you desire, so you'll either play by my rules, or you'll search the entirety of Serbia for the arm.
It wouldn't be the first time.
The information that I have can place you within, likely, hours of being able to speak with the person who holds the arm right now. If that is of interest of you, then you'll have certainly the opportunity to review the drafted letter and sign it and seal it.
I raise an eyebrow at Maggie.
Sounds fine to me.
Very well, then.
It is an exquisite piece, and if the legends are true, that piece is one of a kind, then you might have something of a treasure. I should hope to see pictures after it's all collected.
Oh, of course.
That's Miss Bellinger's area of expertise, not mine, but I'm sure she can arrange something.
Richard, you find yourself in the washroom.
Richard will be hanging around for a short period of time. He's going to look for something sort of heavy, something that he can use like I don't know what would be in the toilet. Maybe something, yeah, who knows.
All right, something heavy in the toilet. Maybe you could ask the gentleman who's here in the toilet with you as the staff assistant if he could appropriate something heavy for you to club someone to death with.
Yes, there's someone there, is there?
Well, certainly, it's a luxurious hotel. There's going to be a staff member there to assist you with whatever you might need. Shoe shine, help you wash your hands, all sorts of things they might do for you here.
Richard will just visit one of the stalls in that case and unzip his trousers and make all the sort of right noises for somebody relieving themselves. Toilet roll holder, which is kind of metallic and heavy.
There is the back of the toilet basin here you might be able to use. Actually, tell you what, Martin, have the professor roll luck for me.
Oh, right. He's got so much of that. 44, so that's a big fail.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to spend a hand of fate in your favor, and I'm going to make that a success. You find, when you're pawing around the bathroom here, you find in a small tucked-in space behind the toilet when you're trying to look to see if maybe there's a loose pipe or something you'll be able to grab, you find a revolver. You find a loaded pistol.
Richard's now also concerned as to why on earth there's a loaded gun in this restroom. Right, so with some degree of surprise, Richard will use the sink.
The staff member turns to you with a dry towel to wash your hands off with.
Right, thank you. He'll dry his hands, slip the guy some sort of local coinage.
See, with tipping not being part of the culture over there, it's very difficult for... You struggle to find oh, yes, here's a bit of extra for your trouble.
Richard will sort of leave the restroom. He's going to make a point of looking embarrassed. He's going to walk out of this thing. He's obviously still got the tea stain in his crotch. He's almost going to be looking at people to be deliberately embarrassed in a strange way. So it's just going to give him some reason to be looking at people. And he's going to notice the guy that was on the train, and I think he's going to walk up to him.
All right, so I'd like you to make me a persuade roll, because you don't have acting, and so we're sort of subbing in for your acting with your persuade, which is, again, as I always like to mention, unnaturally high.
Yes, 18, which is a hard success.
It is. So you put on a believable show. You are a bumbling professor who's evidently spilled something or wet himself. No one's really sure at this point. Ladies, you're at the table. You're probably a little too engaged with the curator to notice this. Plus, it's taking part a little bit away from you. But Professor, you do approach this man.
Good afternoon. Don't I recognize you from the train?
The figure doesn't turn. The figure doesn't move.
Terribly sorry. The train. The Orient Express?
I can imagine you're getting a little louder. So you've come up behind the gentleman to say this? Roughly, or to the side, or direct, or?
Let's say side, really.
Okay.
He wants to talk to him. He's not going to approach him from behind.
The face, the profile turns just slightly. And this older gentleman here is fairly well covered up. And when he turns to look at you, you can see the centuries of lines etched on his skin. You can see into his yellowed eyes and the little rivulets of black that seem to run through them. He gives you a perfect and monstrous smile. And then you're going to make a power roll for me.
Is he with anybody?
He is not with a single person. It's all by his lonesome.
That's unusual. Somebody this old is on his own. That's a 38 again, which is a hard success.
I have a hard success as well. So when he looks at you, you feel two almost meaty hands clap around the side of your head in a very forceful way. You don't see anything, but you feel that pressure instantly on the side of your skull. And you hear him say, Professora, take your seat.
I'm guessing Richard probably would do that then if he... Is that a success on the payroll thing?
Yeah, so you match roll, so it's a wash either way. You can choose to be terrified at this point. That's totally up to you. So you are going to go sit down.
Richard will sit down.
You'll go sit down, or you're going to sit down?
Going to sit down.
Okay. You sit down. So you see his eyes continue to stay on you. You're seeing this too, Mr. Fraser. And he says, you have been a callous sore on a camel's ass this entire trip. You have been blatantly and frustratingly in the way. And if I didn't care about seeing this through, I would simply kill you here. And this sort of old cracked tongue slips through the pair of impressive teeth and almost licks its lips.
I'm afraid we haven't been properly introduced. Might I inquire?
You know who I am, fool.
I'm afraid I don't.
You've seen me. You've been to my house.
Your house?
Indeed. You Boissy. You heard the cries, the people, the pleasure, the pain. You heard all of it.
Does Richard recognize this guy from any of the moments with the device in Poissy?
Oh, certainly. In fact, the last time you saw him this close was when troops were dragging him out of his house, and you watched him, and the two of you locked eyes.
I cannot believe it. I mean, this was I don't know, considerable period of time. You must be dead. Cannot be you.
It is.
How can this be?
Simple. Magic. What? You don't believe in magic? He smiles. It's almost flippantly. Hush, boy. I want to see the girl and how she does. And he just turns slightly back to pay attention to what's going on at the table with Maggie.
Can Mr. Fraser react to this?
You can. You can go right ahead and react, I suppose.
So does Richard just sit down on the floor, or does he sit down at the table?
He sits down into a seat as if a schoolboy has been told by the teacher to sit down and sit down immediately. Like he loses complete bodily control and just collapses into a seat. Almost as if a mannequin is done being played with.
So I think when Fraser sees this happen, he knows what's happened because it's happened to him. The point has come, I think, to stop trying to avoid being seen and known to be there because almost certainly the Comte knows he's there. So he is going to walk over to the table and say, Gentlemen, sir, do you mind if I retrieved my associate?
The comp does not break his view position, and he says, of course, take your boy away.
And he'll just kind of take Richard's arm and say, come along, Professor. Come along with me. There's the good boy.
I'm assuming Richard's able to do this.
Yeah, I don't know that Richard's going to be able, at least in the moment here, to move. So you may have to assist him, we'll just say with gusto.
I'll take his arm and gently and then as firmly as necessary, lift him to his feet and help him walk over and sit back down again, pour him a cup of tea.
This gentleman is... I saw him in Poissy, but not in the present.
I know who it is, you fool. Be quiet now. Sit still.
Richard doesn't have a good sort of idea as to who this guy is. He seems to have largely, I think, been involved with everybody else but Richard. He's only seen him from afar and in the cellar.
You have not had direct contact with him, obviously, but even breaking his general gaze, general area is tough for your mental state. Like, you want to do what you have been told to do. And every time Fraser pulls at you, every time he tries to lead you away, which he can eventually do, there is this deep and inner desire to do what you have been told to do, which is sit down. And so, Fraser, you take him away, but almost like a schoolboy, he's dragging his feet. He's being complete and just utter
pain in the ass.
Back at the table, the curator stands up and says, I'll be happy to see you at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning at the museum. Once the legal assurances are given by you, Lady Elizabeth, I'm certain the information that I can provide will be most valuable to you.
I have no doubt.
Maggie's pulling the arm back towards herself and kind of wrapping it and clutching it.
He straightens his tie, pushes in his chair, and gives you a very simple but respectful bow, and then leaves the cafe.
Well, quite lacking in social etiquette, that one.
And it's at this point that all of the raucousness that has been going on in the background suddenly floods to your table. So you hear Fraser trying to sort of move the professor away from whatever's going on in the restaurant.
I was hoping we'd manage to get sat back down again before their conversation's finished.
Close, but no cigar.
What are they doing?
Well, it seems the professor's up to his usual tricks.
Cannot take them anywhere.
I know. Quite impossible. And just sort of shake my head. We should get...
Yes, I agree, yes.
Yes. Go over and see what's going on with the two of them.
After you get back towards the table, Professor, the feeling lifts. And by the time the two of you have gotten back to the table that you were headed back to, Fraser, and you get a good look, obviously because between the moving and the professor and trying to get him through the cafe here, so you take your eye off of that table. By the time you get back there is an empty wheelchair sitting there.
Of course there is.
Gentlemen, can we be on our way?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like that very much. Can you stand, Professor?
I can. What's going on? Who is that?
Let us go back to our suite at the hotel and discuss it there. Come along now.
So do you walk back to the hotel or do you take a cab?
Depends on if Richard can walk, I suppose, without trying to sit down.
He can. It is a little bit of a struggle. He seems to sort of crouch sometimes, just a little bit before he gets out of the hotel.
Oh, but do we want to be out where the thieves about and such?
Yes, quite. My legs are cold. I mean, this is most uncomfortable.
Well, we walked here. We can walk back.
You know, Professor, it might be wise to start carrying an alternative pair of trousers in your satchel with you wherever you go.
I think that's a splendid idea.
This was a self-inflicted trouser incident.
I was trying to find out who on earth was over there.
I have absolutely no sympathy for this man whatsoever.
Oh, I have no sympathy either. It's just very undignified to be in his company.
Yes, I was trying to find out who he was, and
You've said enough.
Yes, you keep saying.
I suggest you keep your mouth shut until we reach the hotel where we can speak in private. Come along.
Right, okay. Well, let's get a cab then. It'll be quicker.
No, let's walk. You're walking, Professor.
Can we just be on our way? Either way.
But it's cold. I have tea all over my legs. Small wind that there is. It's most unpleasant.
The group of four of you get back to the hotel where there is, while not as opulent, there is a conjoined space which matters can be discussed in private, as is proper. Professor, you're going to likely get the opportunity then to change trousers, which you certainly will. And when you come in, Paul is in one of the adjoining chairs. He seems to be reading a book. He's relaxing. It looks like there's a drink. He's having a smoke. There's a book in his hand. He seems to be just trying to enjoy the night. Oh, welcome back.
Hello, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, good evening.
How was your evening, Paul?
Well, unfortunately, I had to see to Simon a little bit more. Some of his wounds are not healed completely just yet. But I've given him a light sedative to help him sleep. And then hopefully in the morning he'll be a little bit better. If not, I'll be here. Other than that, I'm just reading.
Now, Professor Courtney, if you would be so kind as to explain precisely why, after being told to be circumspect and discreet, you made a great show of spilling tea all over yourself, went out to the gentleman's lavatory, returned, and went to speak to the bloody Comte, you fool. What were you thinking?
Oh, he was there.
I didn't know who that was.
What do you mean you didn't know who it was? Were you not up the clock tower? Were you not in Paris?
I didn't recognize him from the clock tower.
Why did you go and speak to him? Why didn't you ask me then, you fool? You're a liability man, you bloody idiot. He could have killed you. He could have killed you. We know what this man's capable of. You should have bloody asked, man.
How am I supposed to know that you knew him? I mean, what, every stranger on the street? Am I supposed to consult with you to see if you've perhaps made their acquaintance on a previous occasion?
If I told you to be circumspect and discreet, do you not think there was a good bloody reason?
You need to be explicit.
I'm going to wrap the professor across the knees with my cane.
Professor, you get hit in the knee with a cane.
Both of you will kindly keep your babbling to yourselves for the moment and explain what, in the goddess's name, is going on.
The Comte was in the cafe at the hotel watching you. This buffoon spilled tea on himself and went up and started chatting to the man.
First of all, thank you. The context would have been very appreciated before you two started fighting like small children over a piece of chocolates.
Also, of course he was watching us. Why wouldn't he be?
Side-eye at Miss Bellinger.
Ever close, always watching.
You knew?
Well, I didn't know, but, I mean, he's been around enough. Why would he leave?
Nobody's ever pointed him out to me.
What do you think I was doing? If you had just sat still and kept your mouth shut for 2 minutes, I would have explained the situation, but you decided to take matters into your own hands and made a grand scene. You're lucky you're still alive, man.
He knows that we're watching him, and we came back with the arm. I think it was a success.
I should have known he never would have let anything happen to the arm.
What do you mean? Surely he was after stealing it, wasn't he?
Oh, no, not at all.
Do you not listen to anything that goes on in this journey? The Comte isn't interested in stealing the arm. It's very clear he wants Miss Bellinger to possess all the different parts of the body.
But why?
He has his own designs upon that situation. Quite what he intends for her, I don't know, but it's nothing good.
Nobody's explained this to me before.
That's because you don't bloody listen.
Well, nobody tells me. I'm an intelligent man. I mean, if you were to tell me something, I'd surely remember.
Are you? Sometimes I wonder just how intelligent you are.
The question remains, if we are done with the temper tantrums, what precisely are we going to do about it?
Oh, nothing. We were going to sign the letter that the man wants us to sign so that we can get the next piece. There's nothing to do about the Comte.
He knows where the piece is.
Well, he claims he does.
Is this the person you were talking to in the caves that we couldn't see?
I would assume so, Professor.
Oh, yes, in the caves. Yes, I did. He was there, too, yes.
Fraser is pouring himself a very large whiskey.
He's helped us a number of times. Should be thankful for him.
Fraser, might I have one?
Fraser pours you one, puts it in front of you, doesn't speak to you, doesn't even look at you.
Thank you. Richard downs the whiskey and then coughs a little. Oh, my word.
Paul sets a book down, the book that he's writing down, and sort of tries to join the conversation. He says, his effect on Miss Bellinger has been fairly direct, I think. I mean, I've seen it since France.
He's been following us. He's been on the train. I didn't realize it at the time, but when I saw him in the hotel today, it all fell into place. The penny dropped that he has been travelling on the train with us I suppose ever since Paris.
So he probably would know everything. He would know how many pieces have been collected. He would know where we have been.
It would seem so.
Is there anything he doesn't know?
Well, assuming he's psychically attached to Miss Bellinger or something of that sort, I assumed he was with us in general and knew what we were doing anyway.
Did he say anything to you at all, Professor? Did he give any hint of what he wanted?
I did ask him who he was, and he said that I'd been to his house in Poissy. And no, I did see him there, and upon further reflection I recognized him, but not of this time. He must be older than a man can be.
Fraser just looks at you.
How is this possible?
Are you only just realizing this now, Professor?
In my defense, I haven't had the pieces to put the puzzle together with.
Fraser just raises an eyebrow and takes another drink.
Haven't you, Professor?
No.
Haven't you?
I appear to have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe the right place at the right time. But anyway, I've not been playing with a full deck of cards.
Well, that much is certain.
It's unfair to judge me based on an incomplete set of information. I mean, it's preposterous. It's like having too many variables in an equation, expecting you to solve the equation with only half of them when trying to compete with someone who has much more information about what's going on. It's ridiculous.
You've been distracted in your own right with Smith's device.
Well, yes.
Ever the diplomat, Paul. Well said.
I don't see the value in cutting at one another when there's so much we have to still put together.
Is this the reason why Maggie's in constant pain?
I think it's fairly clear that the reason why Miss Bellinger is in near constant pain has been deduced by yourself and then followed up by our own processes, and that these pieces must give off some sort of energy. I mean, we all saw what happened in the various cities that we've been to. Yes, it's not lost on us, is it?
I have it. I mean, Maggie is clearly quite young and youthful and innocent.
Oh, thank you, Richard.
It must be these things that this man is lacking. He's old and, I don't know, devious, crafty, evil, nefarious.
Oh, no, he has many things that I don't have. He can fly.
I'm quite sure that if he was to try and bear these pieces, he would collapse and disintegrate or something. He's putting upon Miss Bellinger because he can't shoulder the burden himself. Fraser, pour me another one of these whiskies. I am quite beside myself.
I think this is good. I think this is healthy. It's important, Richard, for you to bring yourself full circle into the matters at hand.
Well, it's not for want of trying.
You certainly are very trying, Professor. Your ladyship, did you mention something about a piece of paperwork that this fellow Todorovich was looking for?
Yes, the professor will not give us any information unless we, specifically me, sign something saying that a year after we abscond with it, we will return it.
Yes, it sounds to me that it become very common here. In each of these places that we've gone that have been touched by war, the people are trying to continue to reclaim who they were before the war and all of the treasures that have been stolen from them. Belgrade has historically been, sacked several times.
He admitted to himself, though, that it doesn't even belong here. It wasn't made here. It's not some artifact of Belgrade. It just happens to be here now.
That doesn't seem to matter to him very much.
And if we carry out our original mission, it likely won't even exist in a year.
Really? Oh.
Not Belgrade, an artifact.
Oh, okay. Oof. Paul put his hand on his chest.
No, I mean the pieces. We've talked about destroying them. We may have to revisit that.
Excuse me?
Well, we don't really know what they do when they're all together.
Well, we know that it's nothing good.
The professor gave us strict instructions that we should destroy them.
Oh, and you always follow instructions, Professor.
From the professor, yes, of course.
It occurs to me that if the Comte is paying such a close interest in the collection and assembly of these pieces, but not acting directly except in certain circumstances, he would certainly not wish for the simulacrum to be destroyed once it is completed. And if for no other reason, that gives me a very clear direction as to what my intention would be, in that I would not wish it to be of use to him in any way, having seen what he is capable of firsthand.
Well, you did say that in Milan he was particularly terrifying.
Yes, that's part of it, yes.
We must find a way to capture and subdue him.
How do you capture a man that can fly?
People can't fly. It's a simple matter of physics. What force would suspend them from the earth?
Considering, Miss Bellinger, that the birds on our property were never quite safe despite their flying capabilities from my father's rifle, I think we know very well how to stop someone who can fly.
All right, then. So are you suggesting a hunting party, then? Rifles and all?
Not yet. We might need one at some point, but I think we need to find the pieces first.
All right, then. So tomorrow, then, you'll go and acquire this letter, I assume?
That is the plan.
I assume so. He said that he would draft it up and Lady Elizabeth merely has to sign it. And then within a few hours, we should have a good solid lead on where this is.
Paul pours himself another drink. I suppose I'll be available if you need. My responsibilities here, of course, with Simon.
Yes, we need you taken care of, Mr. Griffith. But we'll call on you if necessary.
Splendid. Well, I'm going to go to bed early if you don't mind, Lady Elizabeth.
Oh, please, go on ahead. You don't need to ask permission.
He stands up and collects his book that he was reading and then heads off.
Just out of curiosity, what was he reading?
He is reading This Side of Paradise by Scott Fitzgerald.
Very interesting. Or is it?
We'll find out next week as our journey on Horror on the Orient Express continues. So thank you for joining us, one and all, and we'll see you next week.